So welcome everybody. 안녕하세요. I'm Suzanne Crowder-Hahn. I'm the Vice President of the RAS Korea branch. And I'm so glad to have all of you joining us. We welcome friends and members who are attending in person, as well as those who are joining us via Zoom. RAS Korea is very grateful to the Asian Development Foundation for its continued financial support. And we are also especially grateful to our member, Jon Dunbar. I don't see her. Oh, there she is, right in the front. Jon Dunbar, she's from the TCS Tour Lab, and she has been helping us with this venue. So give her a big thank you. Also, please be reminded that lecture content does not necessarily reflect the opinion or the position of the Royal Asiatic Society Korea. Tonight, we have lecture number 1505, and we will be hearing from our very own RAS board member, Jon Dunbar. He's an editor with the Korea Times, and he's an urban explorer. Jon has been exploring secret places all across South Korea for more than 20 years.
Less than 20 years. Say more than
Less than.
Yeah, 2005.
And tonight he's going to share some of his adventures, as well as talk about the history of urban exploration in Korea. It's a real honor to introduce Jon. So take it away, Jon. Thank you.
Thanks for getting that out of the way, because you won't want to clap later, maybe. We'll see. For today's presentation, before I begin, we don't normally do this, but I wanted to start by telling you about my suit. Yeah, we don't do this often. I am wearing Hilton Lee. I think I've got a thingy here. He is the tailor who's still active inside the now closed Millennium Seoul Hilton Hotel near Seoul Station. So the only way I could figure out how to get past that security guard and get in there was to buy a suit. Fun little tip, that's the only time I've ever done that. Hopefully I won't have to do that again. It's not cheap. Can everybody hear me properly? Am I using this mic properly at the back? I see people nodding, so yeah, must be. Okay, so what is urban exploration? I expect a lot of people will need some guidance on this, but we have discussed it already. 3 years ago almost, Ryan Vertebile gave a lecture titled The Bulldozed Future. And way back in 2015, I gave a talk that was focused more, you can't see that, focused heavily on redevelopment, and I introduced the whole concept and everything. But basically, urban exploring is a term that doesn't literally mean exploring cities, but is about exploring some of the more forgotten and forbidden parts of the city. That includes places that have been abandoned or left to, the wild, places high up on rooftops or in construction sites, and places underground like subway tunnels or underground rivers, which Seoul has many of. I didn't really want to talk too much about what urban exploring is this time. I wanted to introduce you some of the history and lore that has come up in the last over 20 years, before my time too. Because the history of it is interesting and changing rapidly, and also tells us a lot about Korean society, global society, and social media, and all sorts of interesting little cultural things. So it's a very difficult thing to talk about. One of my contemporaries, Bradley Garrett, he wrote a book called Explore Everything. He was I believe a PhD student in the UK, and he did kind of an ethnographic study of urban explorers of that area. And after some of them were caught in an underground tube station, it caused a terror alert, and it was discovered, it traced back to him. And when he arrived back in Heathrow Airport, transit authority people actually went up to the tarmac to arrest him before he could get off the plane. They were treating him very seriously. And from what I understand, his research might have been used to incriminate the people that he studied. So this is always a thing that you don't want to talk about too much. I've made sure to respect the privacy of most of the people we're going to talk about tonight. There are some very notable examples in some cases where they don't care. I'm one of those people. I don't care if I'm associated with this. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and if they're going to arrest me, they would have done so by now, probably. But yeah, this is a concern, and it scares a lot of people. It scares a lot of people in Korea, even though there hasn't been any unreasonable arrest of anybody involved in this hobby. Urban exploration can be often abbreviated to urbex or just simply UE, and that can differentiate it from other uses of the two very innocuous terms, urban exploring. There are also other terms. Bradley Garrett likes to use the term place hacking. I believe that was how he used it in his book. I've also heard, I like this one, recreational trespassing, which really emphasizes the not seriousness of it. Batting is an old term that was used kind of in the older days when it was a lot of university students, I think in the 80s, who were using it. And I came up with my own one that I really like, extreme real estate. Sounds like kind of a soft drink commercial. So also in Korean, there has been a lot of discussion about how to call it. In Japan, they use the term haikyo, which I understand means like, what is it? Useless hill is the translation, but it literally means like abandoned place in Japanese. In Korean, that these characters would translate to heho, which heho doesn't really look good, isn't easy to say in English. This is actually an album covered by a heavy metal musician I know, who romanized it as heho like that, which I found kind of attractive. There were also attempts to turn urban exploration literally into do시탐험, and abbreviated as dotam. So we'll get back to those in a little while. But what to call it in Korean, I think, is important because if we just call it urban exploration in English or Hangulized that, then it doesn't really have a local identity. This, by the way, is a book that I co-created in 2009 to try to encourage people to get into exploring abandoned places. I really wish that wasn't there. So one of the problems with doing all this is that everybody I do meet seems kind of like me. Not just foreigners, a lot of foreigners, people from around the world, people who have similar hobbies to me, who like to go to live music. It feels like I'm kind of just always there with myself, seeing myself reflected, coming up with new characters. So it kind of looks a little bit like myself sometimes. I'm using this not to take credit or anything, but to protect other people's identities sometimes. Yeah, so I'm trying not to censor myself or anything like this when I'm doing this, but it just kind of naturally comes back to that. So how did urban exploration reach Korea? There are many ways that it could have. The internet, obviously, but the Korean internet is especially in the 90s and early 2000s was pretty closed off, and there wasn't too much flow of information. So that leaves foreigners visiting temporarily or permanently, like many of us. Teachers, maybe, military. Also the possibility of Koreans going abroad and going to university especially and being exposed to urban exploring there and bringing it back to Korea is something that I always thought could have happened, but I've never met anybody yet who's done that really. I'm maybe soon. The first wave of actual urban explorers who call themselves urban explorers and knew about all these things were, as far as I can tell, all Seoul American high school students who were on base in Yongsan. They would go off and go out to places. This guy here is my friend who went to that school, who introduced me to the hobby. And on March 2, 2005, he took me to the Samil apartments in Cheonggyecheon. I was kind of sad when I realized Samil, and we went on the day after. But at the time, that was the first time I ever went into an abandoned building and called it urban exploring. And that's a very important distinction because a lot of people have gone to these places and been interested in it or been scared and never wanted to go back, but not really been aware that there was a term for it and a big worldwide culture. So it's always something that I want to try to encourage for people to realize that there's a culture to it. And that culture, can tell them how to do it safely, meet people, maybe find new places to explore. So anyway, after that first attempt, the second time I went urban exploring was in August 2005. This was near Gongdok Station. There's like brownstones there now. This is the first time I went to an abandoned neighborhood. I've since been to about 200 of them. They pop up everywhere. Literally, wherever you see apartment complexes, yeah, like these, they were probably built on the ruins of a neighborhood like this. And as I started to look around, I realized that these are everywhere. And nobody was going to them and taking photographs. I didn't really know why at the time, except me. I started going to them, and at the time, I couldn't find anybody else to do this with me. In 2007, I got back into it really seriously. I went to this place near Shindebang in southern Seoul. It was mostly demolished, and I nicknamed it Little Nagasaki. I think you can guess why. I immediately went online and started sharing this picture with urban explorers in North America. And they just looked at it and said, that's kind of a useless picture. There's nothing here, you know. What's there to see now? So I was pretty surprised. It took me a while to try to figure out how to appeal to people in other countries with this kind of photography. I still think it's an interesting picture. The site that I shared it on was called uer.ca. It still exists, and it still looks like this. It's an incredibly old website. If you are a hacker, please stay away from it because it easily falls apart. When I joined it, I networked with people all over the world, and I saw that they were not only going to abandoned places, but going to rooftops or rooftoping, going underground into storm drains or draining. Craning is construction cranes and then subway tunnels, abandoned mines out in the countryside. A lot of Americans do that. Steam tunnels at universities, they were a very popular thing because a lot of these communities started at universities. In my time in Korea, I have also realized that there's a lot of potential to go onto things like overpasses. About 10 years ago, there was a big trend of closing down overpasses and having a party on them on the last day and then closing them up and slowly demolishing them. Anarchaeology is a term I made up for kind of fun, and then I realized it actually serves an interesting point. After sites are torn down in central Seoul, they often do an archaeological excavation. And when I visit those, I call it archaeology. So I kind of like that term. And also protests. When there are major protests, you can sometimes find urban explorers around the edges, maybe going on the rooftops. During the protests against Park Geun-hye, there was a lot of rooftop activity around the protests. I even know somebody who got onto the roof of the Sejong Center for Performing Arts. I don't know how they did that, but it became almost competitive at that point. It was a lot of fun. Okay. Do I need to put that on?
You might want to check the chat.
That might be the 2 comments.
Okay. Who makes? There. Yes. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is my, okay, whatever. So while I was on UER, I was connected with urban explorers all over the world, including in other Asian countries. And so I decided to kind of survey some of the members and ask them, what's it like where you are? And one of the first people I talked to was an Australian guy living in Japan. And when I asked him, how popular is it there? He said, huge, huge. And he wrote this, so he was really trying to emphasize it. He talked about Haikyo and how it's huge there. I'm not going to read the whole quote because it's long, but there's magazines and books. You can go to any store and buy materials about urban exploring. Basically, it's mainstream there, this was in 2008. Was certainly not the case here. Meanwhile, in China, a guy joined the UER one time, and he was talking about how he had his own Chinese urban exploring community. And he told us in 2008, urban exploring in China goes back just 3 years, so 2005. And the registered members of China's largest UE website, China UER, which he ripped off the code of UER, I won't comment on that, ranging in age from 18 and 40, now stand at more than 40,000 throughout the country. So that's a lot. Singapore, I spoke to one guy and he said, for our group, main active members number less than 10. But what he didn't really say here was that there were multiple crews and they were competing with each other. So even in a small city state like Singapore, there were a lot of people active, which was pretty surprising. They don't have much to look at, but well, they're competing in forming gangs. Malaysia, the guy I spoke to there said, no idea, like I've not found any other serious people like me. More recently, as of, I think that's 2015, Red Bull TV did a special on a famous urban explorer in Malaysia. Korea has never gotten any attention like that. So meanwhile, Korea, this is written by me, I said almost non-existent. At the time, I could think of 3 Canadians, including myself, and 1 British guy who were still actively urban exploring in the country, not counting the previous people. So at the time, I said, I hope there are Koreans who do it and don't know the term urban exploration yet, then that maybe they'd join us. It took a lot of years for that to happen. So meanwhile, the database on UER, you can see here, this is a list of the Asian countries. And whoop, okay. Korea has 737 like individual sites. About 200 of those are abandoned neighborhoods. About 15 to 20 are abandoned amusement parks. There's a lot of other things. You can see a breakdown here. This thing's covering it. Seoul has 421. Ulsan has 1. Busan has 8 because we don't go there very often. There's 1 guy who's active, 2 guys who have been active in Gwangju, so there's a lot of sites there. So yeah, in the meantime, over the years, a small number of mostly, but not all foreigners have been going to all these sites. This is downtown Seoul, and you can see how dense it is. The red X's mean mostly abandoned, mostly demolished, gone. So it's a lot. There's a lot to do, and there's always not enough people to do everything. So in June 2009, I had a photo exhibition. I found out about this place in Incheon called Space Beam, and I presented a bunch of my photos at the time, hoping to get more interest. We printed that book also. Space Beam was basically an art collective built into a former closed makgeolli factory in Incheon's Beirari. And around that time, there were a number of places popping up like this, where Koreans would find an interesting abandoned place and turn it into an art camp or an art collective or something like that. Some of them were politically protesting in nature. But yeah, that started to be an interesting phenomenon. Then I tried introducing groups like this to the concept of urban exploration, but it generally didn't take. So anyway, we had a photo exhibition, and some people were who were in this crowd were there. I seem to recall. I think it was the first time I met Matt, right? Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting, but it left me with some weird feelings that I was some foreigner trying to show this foreign thing, how it might work in Korea, and I didn't like it. Something about it felt weird. I didn't really want it to be like a foreign-driven thing. So at the time, I bought one of these things. Yeah, this is a bit of show and tell here. A Yangban mask, and started modeling pictures in abandoned places. This is Chungil Girls Middle School in Daejeon. At the time, it was an infamous haunted location. Haunted, just we'll get to that in a minute, but it just means that kids go there and vandalize it. But yeah, anyway, by doing this, I was hoping that we could kind of take a lot of questions of race out of the equation, and maybe Koreans could appreciate this kind of thing as art, rather than as a foreigner looking with a critical eye at their country and making them uncomfortable. What's up? The mouse. Here you go. Oh, you can do that from down there. Cool. Okay, we're gonna look at what people are saying. Did people hear us? Join as a guest, left. Okay. Yeah, you might have to scroll down. Okay. Well, did we get it? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. So yes, also, actually, I should point out that the person signing the guest book here is a fairly well-known international artist named Kim Miru, or Miru Kim. She was at the time well known for basically being an urban explorer who was based in New York and would go all over the world and pose naked. And a lot of the discussions about her were like, oh, well, she's just a girl who's, using her sexuality, but her pictures aren't very sexual, to be honest. She found quite a lot of fame in Korea also because of who her dad is. If anybody can recognize this guy.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah. So that's why she was able to live in New York. Yeah. This is one of her photo exhibitions, and he grabbed the mic and sang Fly Me to the Moon or something. But so when she came to Seoul in 2009, she had known about the movie Kaemul, The Host by Bong Joon-ho. And she remembered there were scenes in that movie where the monster abducts a girl and goes underground. And she said, where was that filmed? And her dad's people were like, go under this bridge. There's a giant tunnel mouth. You walk in there. So she did that. She told me later it was very unpleasant, terrible smells, mosquito bites all over her body. So when I heard that, first of all, I was thinking I'm not going to get naked there. But I also decided that the best time to go would be winter. That made sense. So we went for the first time on Christmas Day 2009. I intentionally used a blurry picture there. Yeah, your eyes aren't failing you, don't worry. We walked about 1.5 kilometers in, and since that time, it's become kind of a Christmas tradition that we even did last year. So it's a pretty safe place as long as you bring lots of lights. We discovered you don't even need rubber boots. But here's the entrance to another one of these tunnels. And there was an incident that happened around 2012 that made me realize that we got to be really careful, because there are people who are just not going to use what we consider common sense at these places. So this is the entrance of the stream called Bongwon-chun that runs from kind of above Yonsei University. And it's well protected by a major bridge up there. So a group of artists decided they would have a party down there one time. And in their invitation, they said, come rain or shine. And on the day that their party happened, it was raining heavily. So they set up their tables and I think a DJ booth and stuff. And they're having a good time when suddenly, this thing, by the way, is a natural storm drain. Water started pouring out, started surging, swept a lot of their equipment and almost them into the river. So at that point, I started to realize that I got to be not as publicly, promoting this, and got to make sure that when I do, we promote safety as well. So I've made a list here of some of the people we're going to be talking about: ghost hunters, graffiti artists, subway taggers, careless people, which would include this, arsonists, well, maybe I should make that singular, as well as just media, which leads to overexposure. This is a really good example of what can happen with overexposure. In 2009, we found, somebody got a phone call, that better not be me. Okay, no. So we found this giant 747 up in Namyangju near Gyeongnae Hopyeong Station. It turned out when we visited, we took photos where you can see the tail number, N747PA. It's the second ever 747 built. And a Korean restaurant bought it from an airplane graveyard in the States, had it disassembled and shipped to Korea piece by piece to make it into a restaurant. The restaurant failed and it was just left there rotting. And the restaurant, by the way, is still active in this picture right here. So a bunch of us visited. One of the people was actually a reporter for Vice magazine, and Jacko, this is why I don't like Vice magazine, part of it. Anyway, he wrote an article titled "Seoul's Jumbo Piece of Junk." And he even included a little passage that talked about how we slipped inside by jumping on the wing and climbing through a weird little window there, which isn't something I wanted everybody to know. And this actually triggered an influx of foreign like influencers and bloggers and stuff coming to Korea to visit this airplane. And it got more and more attention. So the owners just finally decided it's a great deal of shame for them, so they destroyed it. Yeah. So that's always a concern. Another similar building, the story of this one is very similar also. When I first went there, I discovered its name was apparently Jeongsin Byungwon. Sorry, Namyang Jeongsin Byungwon. When I ran that into a search and a translator, it said Namyang Funny Farm. I don't know why it thought Funny Farm. It's better known as Gonjiam, which is the name of the area it's in. And at first, this was known among the ghost hunting community. And we found it through a ghost hunting website called Masculine Pride. In English, by the way, in English. It was a neighbor or something page called Masculine Pride. We joined and said, oh yeah, we'll go there too. But we're not ghost hunters, we're urban explorers. We're just gonna take pictures. And they told us, if you go there, the ghosts will break your camera. Didn't happen, I will say that. I do like to think that when I was there, I had a bit of psychological or spiritual armor. That helped. I've been there about 4 or 5 times, and many of those times I failed to get in because there was heavy security. Shortly after my first few visits, not because of me, CNN reported on it, labeled it one of the 10 freakiest places around the world. And at that point, it started getting lots of visitors, like nonstop every day. There'd be people coming, Koreans and foreigners. And in, what year was this? I didn't put the year. I think it was 2018, 2017, anybody know? This movie, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, was released. It's like found footage documentary, horror movie. Not filmed on location. They weren't allowed to use it, so they had to film somewhere else. And as the movie was still in theaters, the actual mental hospital building was demolished to prevent future visitors. I'll be honest, maybe for the better, but there was one point where a really serious near incident happened. I have to explain. This is a picture of a self-portrait of the hallway here. This picture is very dark, but you can see this is drywall and wooden doors. And over here, this is a fun little photo effect you can do where you take steel wool, charsom, and light it on fire and spin it around on like a string or something. This is the stuff right here. It's used for sanding down wood. It's very flammable. So a few foreigners decided to go there, and they were going to do that kind of steel wool spinning shot in this drywall hallway. And I guarantee if they did that, sparks would have flown off from this and lit many little fires everywhere. They made one mistake. They bought this instead of actual steel wool, a regular scrub for your dishes, not flammable, not steel. So that's the only reason you didn't hear about foreigners arrested for burning down abandoned building in Seoul. At that point, I realized we had a growing community of maybe 24, mostly foreign, but let's say 80-20 foreign Korean urban explorers. And I realized at that point we have to be even more safe, more secure. We started a private secret group online, and people had to get nominated to get into it, and the nomination had to be seconded and go through a long waiting process, just to protect the other secrets we have and to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. In 2013, we made a very careless mistake. I was talking with some friends, and we wanted to have a meetup to gather more people. And it was decided we would promote it on, what was it, couchsurfing.org. And needless to say, 24 people showed up for a little rooftop picnic in Myeongdong. And we got kicked off the roof. Nothing bad happened. I met a lot of great friends that time. But I started to realize all my practices in the past of just, I went to this site and then I put it online, were suddenly very increasingly dangerous. I made a parody of this at one point. There were starting to be signs of like what we call ruin porn, poverty tourism. I don't think I meant disaster tourism. Slum tourism, that's it. So on April Fool's Day 2013, I came up with my own Abandoned Korea Super Tour. And I photoshopped the bus and everything. So we'd be like, we're going to take a bus to all these sites. And I had a lot of people join. And a lot of other people who weren't in on the joke got angry at us. A lot of other people got the joke. Another thing I did, in my complaints about like these kind of group tours of getting too many people, I used an expression that was common at the time. I said, it's not a clown car. And then I was thinking about it and I thought, well, why not? So this is the mask now. I decided to pretend to be a clown and go to these sites and use this photographic technique to duplicate myself and fill these places with clowns. This was intended as kind of a satire of all these movements that were happening. Meanwhile, the numbers of people that were being involved, there are 3 different groups on Facebook that I know of for urban exploring. The main public one is Korean Urban Exploration. You could search that right now and find it. It currently has 297 members. And the reason for that is because it got put on a list of meetup groups. So for a brief period, for several years, every time a new semester started and there was a new intake of foreign teachers, we would get like 20 new members. So that site was abandoned basically in 2013. We started a secret group where you could only get there if you get a link shared with you. And that got to 75 members. And in 2019, I realized that most of those 75 members were foreigners who had left, or even Koreans who'd gone abroad. So I said, let's start a new one. If you're still around, you can join the new one. So we started that, and it's 39 members now, and I think a lot of them are gone. So it's a very small one, but it's the core place where a lot of these things are discussed. Also, the RAS has become a place where a lot of urban explorers have showed up. I think 2 people here in this picture are in this room today. This is actually after an RAS garden party. We went across the street to an abandoned building. I'm going to name this guy here, Peter Bartholomew, our ex-RAS president. Unfortunately, he passed away 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I don't know, yeah. Almost 3 years ago, I think, yeah. We just got into this building, and walking around with Peter was quite an amazing experience. He could just size up a room and be like, it'll take this much to fix it, and like name prices and stuff. It was weird. So yeah, a very fun time just after a garden party. And after that, you started seeing more urban explorers around RAS events. And as I mentioned, there have been a couple lectures. In 2015, it was the 10-year anniversary of a guy named Ninjalicious, a Canadian who founded the website UER. He had passed away 10 years earlier, not related to an accident, but a health problem. So we decided we would have kind of a Korean-style Jesa type funeral for him in Korea. I figure if his spirit is somewhere out there, he'll find it drawn back to Earth, and he'll go to a country he's never been and find this weird assortment of food. It was a really sloppy kind of, Jesa is the right word still, right? Yeah. Performed in an abandoned building. His name being Ninjalicious, I think it's like Jeff something. I was able to translate into Hanja as Ninja Mat, or Ninja Flavor. I was pretty proud of that. So yeah, the community of urban explorers at the time, a small group of us, came there and we all bowed to the spirit of Ninjalicious. I thought that was a fun way to raise awareness of who he was. I should have brought that book, but his name is written on a copy of his book, which I then started distributing to the Korean members there. Social media around that time, Instagram started to become more of a thing. And as I got better at using it, I realized you could search for hashtags like 재개발, 빈집, 폐허, 폐교, 폐공장, 폐공원, lots of things like that. And you could find all the abandoned sites that just anybody walking around Korea would just take a picture and post. It became incredibly useful for a few years. But then it turned out that other people were watching them too. And I was really hoping that any of these groups would kind of join in with urban exploration, but all of them kind of went different ways. There were suddenly, for one period around maybe 2015, a wave of semi-nude models appearing in abandoned places all over the country. I thought that was kind of cool. It would usually be a photographer bringing a model there. And the model, I don't know, she was probably terrified. But after a few years of this, they just started taking pictures in easier to go locations, because why would you go halfway across the country, potentially trespass or get in trouble, to risk life and limb to get into one of these buildings when you could just go to a Noribang, down the street and get the same effect from your pictures, basically. Also, I started seeing maybe about 2016 or 17, no, 18, cat rescue, like trap, neuter, release programs popping up in these neighborhoods. So JK Bio became a tag that a lot of trap, neuter, release volunteers were using. So I got to learn a lot about those people. That was quite interesting and pleasant. These days, most abandoned neighborhoods actually in Seoul do have trap, neuter, release programs to humanely remove the cat population from the area and curtail their growth. Also, I started to see projects about apartment buildings being torn down, such as the Gapo apartment complexes that are undergoing reconstruction right now. There was like from Gapo tree, which was about the trees in the complexes, Gapo there. All these people who were really interested in these old buildings, the aesthetic of them and everything. A lot of them had lived there in the past or had been living there. They showed a lot of interest in this one building, and then one apartment complex. When it was gone, they just didn't do anything again. I was kind of disappointed they didn't move on to Banpo or something. So another thing that happened around 2014, maybe you've seen in the news sometimes, we started getting a massive influx of subway taggers. Has everybody heard about this? They show up in the country, stay for a couple of weeks, and on the last night, they cut locks, break into a subway depot, and tag a train. And then the train gets discovered maybe the next morning, gets cleaned up before it goes into service, and they send the relevant CCTV footage to immigration to catch the culprits. But usually they leave the country before they're identified. After a few years of this, they started being caught. And by the way, this was like, I think at its height, it was at least monthly. And they were always hitting the same 3 points for a while. There was one time where some train taggers caught a flight from Korea to Japan. And then when it's time to go back to their home country, their plane returned to Korea to go to their home country. And they were caught when they were transferring in Korea. It took quite a while to start catching them. I believe that there's probably a website similar to UER where international taggers talk with each other and discuss exotic destinations to go to tag trains, which is why they all do it. I've always been curious. One time I was contacted by a Latvian guy who was like, hey, I'm an urban explorer from Latvia. I'm really interested in subway tunnels. And he was like, do you know any? And I was like, yes, I do, but we got to meet first. And we never met. And then I found out later that one of the suspects arrested was Latvian. So yeah, that was fun. Yeah, it would have been interesting to meet him and try to figure out why they do this. You might look at me and be like, why does he do this? But I look at them and I'm like, why do they do this? This is an actual crime. They are committing property damage. And urban explorers are, one of the things we're good at is not property damage. Anyway, it keeps us safe, keeps everybody safe. So in 2016, with the construction of Lotte World Tower, it started attracting another type of group of people, worldwide influencers. Some of the most famous were two, I think a Ukrainian and a Russian, possibly two Russians now, who were part of a group called, and by the way, that wasn't a joke. He was from one of the parts that was occupied early, and he was a sympathizer with Russia. They had a group called On the Roofs, just the two of them. They came to Korea, and despite the Lotte people being on high alert, they managed to climb all the way to the top of the tower where there was a construction crane very high up. Yeah. So actually, by the way, they did this thanks to generous sponsorship from anywayanyday.com, a Russian-based air ticket selling service. So a lot of these people can move around by having a sponsor. Another good example of this, just last year, this guy, the British Spider-Man, was the second person caught climbing the exterior of Lotte World Tower since it opened. Both of them made it up halfway. I happened to meet this guy. He's a really nice guy. very well trained. But yeah, he was sponsored by Riot E-Liquid, a vaping company that they gave a big long quote to me when I was trying to do a news article about this. The reason we partnered with George is there are, it's cut off, parallels between his own journey and that of a smoker or an ex-smoker. He is addicted to putting himself in an environment that puts himself under immense stresses and challenges. Although a smoker won't find themselves trying to quit at 10,000 feet, they do have to talk blah, 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 blah. We're committing to supporting blah, blah, blah. So yeah, they were very interested, even after he was arrested, in promoting the hell out of this. I will say, though, they hired his lawyer and took good care of him while he was here. But yeah, the fact that people are being sponsored to go over the world can be alarming. Yeah, this really drove kind of a lot of changes to the urban exploring community in the middle of last decade, from about especially 2014 to 2017. If you were well enough known on Instagram, then you would get corporate offers. This culminated in other countries, never in Korea really, but especially in China, there were many well-known cases. There was one guy just before the pandemic, I think, who was he was offered some huge amount of money to hang off the edge of a building. And he did that. It was live streaming and it captured him falling to his death. And yeah, he was doing that for money from a sponsor. So yeah, there's a lot of concerns about, how adding, let's just say monetizing urban exploration can make it go dangerously wrong. So meanwhile, in Korea, this whole rooftoping fad kind of bypassed us. There were certainly people who wanted to be, this kind of influencer who is globe hopping and goes on daring adventures, but none of them really ever got really big. There are a few examples here, some that I really like. Maybe some of you have heard of Noé Alonso. He was one of the kind of really good photographers who was doing rooftoping photography, but he got really good at it. So good that he started looking for new challenges. He became very well known for cyberpunk photography too. Many of the other really good people at this they gave up on rooftops and started climbing mountains, which actually that sounds very wholesome. So it created a lot of great photographers who kind of lost interest in rooftops and moved on. And yeah, Noé Alonso is still active and doing some really interesting work, but I don't know if he does rooftops anymore. Meanwhile, we have a few other examples of weirder things. This guy, Korean Ninja, his thing was he likes to hang off ledges and just, kind of goof around, take pictures of himself or whatever. I heard one time, apparently he was up on a rooftop with a few friends doing his thing. He was going to dangle from a ledge, and he slipped and he fell and he caught himself. And they all realized he almost died. And at that point, I think his friends kind of said, I don't want to do this with you anymore. He's still active, but I don't think he quite does this anymore. Yeah. There's also, I love this guy down here. He might still be active. Lone Wolf, the rooftop terrorist. Terrorist, yeah. One of my friends told me about this guy. He was like, this makes me uncomfortable. And I'm like, yeah, that's a little scary, actually. I don't I want to make people think I'm not a criminal. I don't want to convince people I'm a terrorist. So yeah, a cop asked me once if I was a terrorist. I told him, Canadian terrorist, are you crazy? And he was like, no, he looked at me and he was like, no, there have been. He was right. That wasn't me though. So there is a Seoul rooftoping Facebook page. It still exists, but it's not active. It has 955 members. They were really pretty active at their height. They were founded, I think the first post is July 2013. And there was some really great work there. The guy who actually started the site did it because he wanted to find secluded places so that he could enjoy smoking his cigars. That was his reason. I think that's actually pretty interesting. There's a lot of obsession of going up there and taking pictures. Finding another activity, even if it gives you lung cancer, why not? But he actually passed on the torch to Noé Alonso, who continued to do really good things with it. You might know, I wish Robert Kohler was here. He's a really good example of this. I think he's one of the ones who graduated from rooftops to mountains. And yeah, it's always interesting to see these people's career directions. I've known several others who have gone into just like street photography, showing people and stuff. A lot of really good photographers. It seems like if you're a good photographer, you get out of urban exploration, and that's why I'm still doing it. Yeah. So I decided to make fun of all these influencers. In 2013, I bought a Santa suit, and I was sorry you can't see everybody. Yeah, I was like, the original rooftopper is Santa Claus. And I started to think, if he comes to Korea, he's going to have a lot of trouble finding chimneys to go down. So yeah, this is Santa attempting to look for the chimney, and also a place for the sleigh to park. During the pandemic era, we're going to move ahead a little bit. The pandemic era was actually pretty fun for urban exploring. One reason is everybody was wearing masks. So that meant we could all have a disguise. So yeah, masks are nice. We were even able to continue urban exploring while socially distancing. This is a meetup that we had when the limit to the number of outdoor groups was 4. And in this picture, you can see 4 groups socially distanced, 2 groups of 4 socially distanced from each other. We had a fine time. So yeah, all these things continued being possible during the pandemic. Quite a lot of us continued working on publishing. Ryan Berkebile, the other guy who lectured about urban exploration, he titled his lecture, The Bulldoze Future, the same name as his zine series. He was, I think, kind of the first, maybe tied to do these kind of like zines. And then we have another guy called Bill, I'm not going to use his full name right now, who put together a zine called Photon Wave Function. I think it had like 12 or 13 issues, all with a different theme, from like rural kind of desolate sites in around Sejong City. So yeah, there's also the guy who does the what's it called? Lost in Honam column that usually runs in Gwangju News. He's got a monthly column there. I think he still does it. And some of these books that are outside, like photo books and a collection of essays and stuff. So we have all been kind of, transitioning into not really taking photos, sometimes videos, but writing about our adventures too. And that's kind of a new thing. And I was kind of thinking, like, the whole urban exploring thing is winding down. People in other countries say it's winding down. It's just kind of dispersed and there's not as much general interest. It's like a fad that went away. But I was really surprised recently to discover that there are quite a lot of Koreans who do it now. And all of a sudden that meant I had to rethink the history of urban exploring. It's such a usually solitary and secretive hobby that it's very hard to find other urban explorers, which is why we kind of look online. But I recently was informed by a friend who I think is in this room that there is a DC Inside page called Pega Gallery, where people share pictures of explorations of abandoned places. There are, similar to how we have the different tiers of Facebook groups, there are Kakao groups, a public group with 500 members. I think it's maxed out to the maximum number. And a private group with 17 members who are all much more serious, like every weekend they go and stuff like that. I'm not going to say too much more about it because I'll probably get assassinated. But I will say that they are a lot more into YouTube channels. These are 3 of my favorites. There's Doshithamham, who is apparently the guy who's kind of founded this community. He has got a YouTube page. And also Jon Dunbar. I'm not gonna say too much about him because I know he'll send a drone to kill me. He explores his sites using a drone. He goes out into the countryside and finds places where, especially places where you couldn't get to, but he can get his drone in or something. Very interesting. And yeah, Adven Life. I don't think I can talk much about him right now because he's a very secretive person also. I also have discovered through this community that there is even quite an interesting industry of older people who engage in urban exploration, something I never thought would happen. They go out to remote mountain regions and visit often abandoned buildings there and make videos. And they're all people who, I don't know how old they are, but I've heard, I think retirement age. Yeah, it's very interesting to see Koreans of all generations getting into this. After I discovered these channels, I went to an abandoned neighborhood in just outside of Seoul, and I passed by a guy who must have been maybe close to 70, who brought his phone out and he was taking pictures, and I thought maybe he's one of them. Before, I never would have imagined that people might be there for the same reason as me. So I've learned quite a lot of interesting characteristics about the local Korean urban exploring community. They are very secretive. A lot of them go by aliases. They're a little competitive to each other. Yeah. The group is kind of younger. I'm not too sure how young, and I don't mean like the age of the participants. I mean how long it's been around. They really embrace technology, including new recording equipment and social media. They are really about abandoned stuff, and tunnels and roofs and things like that are something they do a lot less. That kind of makes me a little different from them, and I'm looking forward to seeing them get into that more. They're geographically widespread and socially disconnected from each other. In the few times I've gone and met Korean urban explorers, even they are meeting each other for the first time. To me, it's just normal. Like if you're an urban explorer, you do a lot of stuff alone, but you network with people. And if you meet somebody in real life, then that helps establish trust, and then you can collaborate with them. I've also found that they, like all their pages and everything, everybody talks in Korean. And even when they're aware that I'm there, sometimes some of the people get a little awkward and are embarrassed about their own possible English language skills. So that's kind of created a bit of a barrier, a cultural barrier, and it also seems that they lack kind of the global connections with urban explorers in other countries. But the one thing I have always thought, it's really their country. The whole time I've been doing this, I've been hoping that more Koreans would get involved, and I'm really happy to see it. So with more Korean urban explorers, it'll lead to a change in the narratives and perceptions and reception and popularity of urban exploration in Korea. And that is overall a good thing. It also means it's no longer going to be a weird foreigner thing. So the increased participation is going to mean more people getting involved, more people going to sites. That might lead to more injuries, more law enforcement preparedness, maybe more punishment. These days, when in the past, when an urban explorer gets caught, even if the police are called, they just let you go. That guy, George, who climbed Lotte World Tower, I meant to mention this. Does anybody know what he was charged with? Not trespassing, not destruction of property, interference with a business. Yeah, because they couldn't think of anything else. But in the future, if they get a few more Georges with, prominent arrests, maybe they'll have a charge. Maybe they'll know what to do to start punishing urban explorers. So I'm really curious, why now all of a sudden is this like changing of previously unfavorable attitudes? Or is it just like the concept is spreading more and more people are communicating about this? Maybe it is something that people took up more during the pandemic. Is it some sort of twisted version of Hallyu? I'm kind of hoping for that. Time will tell. I'm hoping that events like this might help shed more light on it and get a bit more of a robust community going and more communication between the outside world and the inside Korean urban exploring community. We'll see. During Christmas, we went back to the host tunnel. That's what I call it from the movie. We had a really large group of about 20 people. 3 of them were Korean urban explorers, and those 3 Korean urban explorers looked around and were like, there's so many people. It's weird. I could tell it bothered them a little bit, and I don't blame them. But I've tried doing all sorts of outreach things to try to get some interesting things going. One thing that I'm doing is a film festival of urban exploring videos. It's going to be held at Ulji Gongan or Ulji Space, not too far from here, April 6th. If you go to Dotam Film Festival on Instagram, you can find out more information. We're about to start announcing some of the participants, but I can do that now. One of the films we're going to be showing is called The Urban Suite, starring or made by Forrest Ian Etzler and Sebastian Simon, not Simon Sebastian, gotta not mix them up. Filmed in 2013 at the ruins of Gyeongnam-dong in Western Seoul. So we're going to be showing that. We're going to be showing a video by Bart. Yeah, what foreigners learn from Seoul's abandoned towns is the name of it, or why foreigners are fascinated by Korea's abandoned neighborhoods. I don't know why there's two names, Bart, but yeah, it'll be fun to show. If anybody remembers Ryan from RES lectures and stuff, he's kind of the star of it. So Ryan just left the country a couple of weeks ago. I'm really happy to have this video to let people experience urban exploration with Ryan. This one is an unusual one, Hidden Currents, we're calling it. This was a video that was put online 2020, I guess. I think recorded a little earlier. The guy went into a tunnel and he was approached by law enforcement and they asked him to take it down. Because of Cheongwade moving, it's no longer a security threat, so we're going to show it at the film festival. But it has not been online for many years. It's called Pseudo-Catholic Monastery Exploration by Drone Explorer. So we're going to be showing that one. This is his equipment. He's got a little runway and stuff. So yeah, that should be a fun one. Inside Scoop from the Influencer is made by a Russian filmmaker who came here 2018 or so. I recorded this movie making fun of influencer culture in Korea, even though Korea didn't really have that. And it's the weirdest satire. It's just weirdest, campiest thing with some very bizarre acting. I think one person in the video is in this room. Bricks and Trees, starring Barakat. Yeah, recorded with Dongjak FM, a documentary about the refugee background of the disappearing community of Noryangjin, recorded just last year. I'm not going to go through too many others. This one, it's got a really clickbaity sounding title. What are they hiding? It turns out this abandoned amusement park in Ulsan, Yangsan, had a live tiger living in it. And this guy revealed this video with footage of the tiger. Chunguki Spy, the spy from heaven. This guy contacted me and asked, hey, do you accept videos from overseas? And I was like, I guess. And he showed it to me. It's a town in France. It was a ghost town that was put up for purchase, and it was bought by a famous American artist, according to the news, named Ahe. Does everybody know who Ahe is? Yu Byung-un, owner of the Seoul ferry. So this guy went there after his death, I think, when it was still ruins. So yeah, some of these get into some pretty crazy content. This is one of the few fiction, I believe fiction, videos. Yu Eun-kang Namgyojin Kotul. It's kind of just a portrait of somebody squatting in an abandoned hanok in Gyeongnam-dong, I believe. So yeah, that's the event. If you want to learn more about urban exploration, get involved, or anything like that, that's the next big event. We don't have many events. I believe this is where I am stopping the lecture, so I don't know how much time I have for questions. 8:28. Oh, I talked for exactly an hour almost. Okay, so if anybody has any questions. Right. Yep. Okay. Oh boy. You in the back.
Hang on, wait.
Oh, okay. I chose the person in the most difficult location. It is, well, as it says in Uljiro. If you go to that, or if you search Ulji space or Ulji Gongan, you will find it. Yeah. Yes, only one day. The idea is a whole bunch of videos, more videos than I showed there. By the way, if you submitted a video and it wasn't shown there, it's still possibly going to get in. Probably going to get in. Looking at you, other guy with your hand. But these are the only some of the first announced.
Okay, can we make sure that before you talk to the microphone, just for the so that everybody who has a question gets a chance. So go ahead with your question.
Okay.
Oh.
Can you please wait?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You might have to turn it on. Check the button.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Real quick, I thought of parkour, there might be some overlap.
Ah, yes. Yes, there are so many things like that that intermix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Question. Yeah.
not an academic.
That's okay. Was this academic? Go on.
The tactic,
Oh, yes.
deliberately stepped over those, but are you talking about how do you approach these sites?
A lot of them you can just walk in. Sometimes the really special sites, you have to climb a fence or something. There have been some places where, yeah, it can be a little dangerous. That one time I mentioned at the start of the lecture, I got in by buying a suit. So it can be different often.
Yeah, and then the ground one, talking manhole.
Oh, no. That might be possible, but most manholes are going to lead you to really weird, like anything kind of spaces. Most of the underground rivers I go to, I access through like a tunnel intake, like off a body of water or something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of safety stuff for that. If you do want to do that, I suggest you look up a document called Predator's Approach to Draining. It has all the information you need to know about like danger situations, what to do, things like that. Materials you need.
So the lock cutting is left to the subway pattern.
Yeah, I don't do that. I did know a guy who picked locks, and I brought him along with me a couple times. He never successfully picked a lock. One time I brought him to an abandoned hospital, and we were going to go to the door on one side. We show up, and the door was unlocked. I was like, I didn't tell him to go home. We just went in. But yeah, it's pretty easy. It's going to get harder as more people do it, but there are still possibilities. I wanted to mention about parkour also. I have known a couple of one traceur who was active doing a lot of this stuff. There's some crossover, yes, especially for climbing and stuff like that. That one guy I showed you who was hanging off buildings and goofy stuff like that, he called that parkour. It's not parkour. It made my other parkour friend very angry. By the way, I might as well try to comment on some of this person is talking about the dangers. So I'm going to treat that as a question or an observation I can talk about. The reason they're hiding is that it's dangerous. It's not exactly true. They're just left alone. And there's not much done to discourage people from entering. Sometimes literally nothing at all. Sometimes a sign, sometimes a fence. But yeah, this person is right that there are always dangers. And that's why sometimes some of this stuff has to be treated as forbidden knowledge that has to be controlled. Because the more people know about it, the more people will go there and get hurt or damage it or something like that. What? Advice, solutions. I'm not presenting solutions here. My solutions for this right now are about mixing communities. So that's about it. Yeah.
Got one more right here in the back.
Oh, yeah, hold on. Confidential things. Actually, this is one thing I learned from my Korean colleagues. Whenever they find like abandoned pictures or something, one guy, Doshi went into a house and he found, a building, and he found like abandoned family records, and he blurred all that. Like all this stuff, the Koreans blur this stuff for confidentiality reasons. It's something I've started doing, but I've got to look back through my stuff. Military facilities. Oh, that's a good one. There are many sites that are forbidden for military reasons. I don't mess with those. I don't want to end up in Guantanamo Bay. But when a military site is closed down and returned to the public or something like that, there is a time where it's safe. So it really helps to know these things. Anyway, sorry, those are all very interesting comments from the person online. So thank you. I hope you're not too terrified of what I'm talking about. People who do this safely generally stay safe and try to keep others safe too. Okay, next, yeah, Kutzer.
I just want to add that Gwanjam, the movie was filmed in Busan on Dongdo.
Really? How convenient.
The actual hospital was demolished months after,
That's weird.
the movie came out.
Okay, I didn't know where it was filmed, but that kind of explains it. It certainly looked like an abandonment, but it was a school, not a hospital, huh? I once went to an abandoned military base. I'll say it now, Camp House. It's now actually open to the public. There's a park in it and everything. One of the barracks there was, when I went there, it was dressed up as a like St. Agatha mental hospital or something. It was used in a K-drama as a filming site. So yeah, that was kind of a surprise. Okay, anything else? Oh boy, okay. Yes, close guy, okay.
Okay, so the couple times I've been urban exploring in
Mhm.
Korea,
Oh, yeah.
I've smelled a distinct smell of mold.
Mhm.
And also I've been reading up that older buildings had asbestos in them. So I'm just wondering, what are your perspectives on the mid to long-term safety side of things? Do you wear any breathing protection? Do you tend to avoid certain structures or any red flags that you would like to share?
Yeah, so the way I see it, when you ride the subway, you're exposed to asbestos. So yes, you are. So if a site is open to the air, you're probably safe. Like people who get sick from asbestos are from daily exposure for decades. I don't like to mess with that stuff, I'll be honest. If something is too closed off, I don't go in there. If they are doing asbestos abatement, I don't go in at all. When asbestos is being removed, it kicks up and it becomes particles that get in your clothes and you'll bring it home. It'll be with you the rest of your life. I have a friend who went to, I think it was like some sort of golf facility. He went inside, all the buildings, like all the doors and windows had been shut, not locked. He goes inside, he was exposed to bird crap, and it gave him some sort of infection that put him in the hospital for the rest of his Jeju trip. So yeah, that can happen. If it's exposed to the outside air, you're much safer. If air is stale, it's dangerous. A lot of underground rivers, at the entrance, they have these kind of vinyl drapes that keep air, like bad air in. I don't like to go in those. They smell terrible and they're probably going to hurt you. Recently, I was in that tunnel that I mentioned where the flood came out, and we got very far in, and the air smelled fine. Actually, I was surprised. And then we got to one point and it started smelling like rotten eggs, and I knew that means possibly sulfur. So we got out because that's dangerous. So yeah, if you read, if you do ever go underground, as I recommend, there's that document, Predator's Approach to Draining, that tells all the danger signs. Yeah. Did that answer everything? I hope. Mold. To be honest, I was just in an abandoned apartment building that was heavily moldy. I just limit my exposure. Yeah, I like 30 seconds and I'm out. I had actually, during the pandemic, I think it was unique because I'd be walking around in public with a mask on, and then I'd go into an abandoned building and I'd take my mask off. So kind of the opposite of what people should be doing. Yeah. So yeah.
No, right behind you.
Oh,
And then someone else after.
how about?
Just, because of the past six years, how do you sort of see the aesthetics of the building become more used to specifically
In Korea, yep.
So for example, perhaps, type of inspiration now,
Yes. Did we have? I don't. Bridget? Yeah, I think, okay.
Even we have the commercial.
Yeah.
What feelings on that for building expedition?
Yeah. Now, like what people are attracted to in those cases isn't necessarily like abandoned and nobody else is there, but a retro aesthetic. And yeah, I mentioned some sites like Space Beam and things like that, which by the way, it's called Incheon Munhwa Yangjojang now, Culture Brewery. Places like that are, you know, it's a different thing where they take a site and they turn it into, you know, their facility kind of thing. You know, they dress it up, like what's happening in Seongsu-dong, what happened in Mule-dong, what's happening in Ujido. That's kind of similar, but I think that the technique that people are using to transform the areas is not the same and not really compatible with urban exploration. It's kind of cool. I like it. I think it's great, actually. But I've never thought to do that. By the way, one of the people I think is online here, Sibella, she gave a lecture last time about Uruk World Music House. And yeah, she found an abandoned hanok in the countryside, bought it, and turned it into basically a concert hall. That's a similar example of what you're talking about. And yeah, there's some similarities there, but if you go to that place, it's not urban exploring, you know. Like if you go to a place that's been turned into a cafe, it's not the same as going to an abandoned mental hospital where nobody else is around. So yeah, both are interesting for different reasons, and I think it's great to see repurposing of buildings. I really do, especially for artistic purposes. But yeah, there's a limitation with how close they are together. Anyway, yeah. That's okay, don't worry. Yeah, weird microphone.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's why I use this one.
Right. So about the festival.
Oh yes.
We know the date now, but is there like a specific time we have to be there by, or?
To be announced. We're putting together the program right now. It'll be mid-afternoon, maybe 3 p.m. or something like that. Might be up to 3 hours of films and then live music after or something. But it's all being put together right now.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a deadline on March 2 for the films, and now we have to evaluate them and find out what we have to do. As I mentioned, I only said some of the films. There's many more. One that I didn't announce, there's one scene where it shows like a practice mannequin for medical doctors that was too anatomically correct. So yeah, we're working on cutting that a little bit. Sibella, who I mentioned, gave a lecture last time. She's got some really nice videos showing this hanok in the process of abandoned to being repaired. We're probably going to show some of her videos. So yeah, there's a lot. Anyway,
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot to think about though. A lot of work to do.
Anyone else who hasn't passed the test yet?
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get to people.
Okay, yeah, time for you.
And,
There's more?
Oh yeah. Two more.
Oh yeah, sure.
Also, if I was like a newbie into this whole urban exploration thing.
Yep.
Is there anything, like any equipment or anything that needs to be bought for like specifically exploring these?
No.
kind of areas?
It's nice to have a flashlight always, even if you're not urban exploring, I think, or 2 flashlights.
Something like maybe like PUBGs, first aid kits, those kind of stuff. Or...
First aid kit? No, you got a cell phone. That's your first aid kit.
Okay.
Power bank. We do have one of those. Only if you're doing something really serious. I want to know what that's about.
What are like nice?
A camera of some kind, even if it's your phone. I've got a DSLR, but like last weekend I went urban exploring, I used this, not my DSLR. So yeah, that's pretty simple. Clothes, you should not wear a suit like this. One rip, and like if I get a rip in my clothes, I refer to it as my urban exploring outfit. Yeah, I actually don't like wearing jeans. I like wearing slacks because they look a little bit more formal. So when people catch me, they don't think I'm just a tourist or something. And yeah, I've got a collection of pants at home that have like tears in them, crotch ripped out, or things like that. And those are my urban exploring clothes. Yeah, so wear bad clothes. Yeah.
And the last question is, well, I think in the more recent days, and I guess more people about my generation, We do talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you think that and like globalization and like we meet people on like games and online communities a lot more often than maybe people from older generations now. So maybe do you think that might be why the urban exploration in Korea might be changing a little bit?
I'm hoping that in the future, more Korean urban explorers can tell us. But I feel like because of the language differences, it's not that. I think it's been spread among Koreans, like Korean to Korean, and I don't really know how it started or anything. I'm hoping to find like the sparks that started it, but I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Wang's been waiting. Yeah.
I really
Can you
admire
make sure you're the right one?
Oh yeah.
really admire your energy. Where did you get your energy?
Energy?
Overhead.
Oh.
To be very straightforward with you, John.
Yep.
You know, my generation has gone through a kind of a jagged valley.
Yes.
Street development, right?
Yeah.
This, terminology.
Yep.
Urban exploration is quite unfamiliar. I'm
Yep.
familiar with that.
Mhm.
And acknowledge that maybe I'm being confused.
Mhm.
Can you clarify that? What about rural exploration?
Ah.
Because include number one question.
Mhm.
Number two question, the ultimate goal of urban exploration is what?
Ooh.
Give a second life, or do you just explore and enjoy it?
These are good questions.
Yeah, third question, why
Oh, boy.
Korean community or UA, they make it secretive?
Okay. Number one. Wait, number one was wait again. Energy? No, not that. Rural. Okay, so urban. Okay, what drugs do I use? I had a bit of coffee before. Urban exploration. Urban doesn't mean in the city necessarily. It means built by humans. And a lot of urban exploration is done in the countryside. I especially stick to the city, but because my scooter is electric and it doesn't have a big range. But I know other people who go to the all corners of the peninsula, and they're in valleys where there's not a single other person around, and that's still urban exploration. So yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Yeah. What are the goals of it? That's an interesting one.
Second life, or just explore or enjoy it?
It can be that. It's a lot of things for a lot of people. It's actually often very not enjoyable. It's stressful, dirty, can be scary, dangerous. For some of us, we're driven by artistic inquiry, like people who want to take pictures or videos or something. Yeah, maybe some people are a little attracted to the risk taking of it. Yeah, some people are obsessed with just seeing what's there and knowing and, you know, finding out what's there. For your generation, you guys lived through a lot of, you know, JG, as you said, and everything. And for younger people, some of us, I think, want to learn about your generation's experiences. So there's a lot of historical curiosity among urban explorers. Yeah, there was a book published recently by one of our RAS regulars, Sok Ji-hoon, and am I going to forget his name right now? Nate Cornegay, thanks. I wrote an article, I interviewed him, but I forgot his name because Cornegay, yeah. They used photos from Ryan Berkebile, the urban explorer. He goes to abandoned places, he takes pictures, and they found historical value in his pictures. So to me, I feel like it's an obsession that we have to see these things before they're gone and before they're forgotten. So yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in the past in it. And what was the third question again? Why secretive? I think that's obvious. I think I've addressed it quite a lot. If it's not secretive, you might be able to find who did it and get them in trouble. If it's not secretive about the locations, then everybody will go to this place, and some people, bad things will happen. Somebody might get hurt or arrested. The property owner might destroy the building. So there's a lot of concern about keeping it sustainable. Yeah. Yeah. Good questions. Yeah, what's up?
We're running a little close on time. We can take another few questions. Afterwards, though, we usually return to some place fairly close by and have a couple drinks with the speaker. Presumably, you have a little bit of time though?
Yeah, I wish we could talk. I could talk to this person. I'm curious. They seem a little pointing out all the dangers, things that I know very well. But yes.
If you have questions and we don't get to them, or if you're shy and don't want to ask in front of everybody, after lecture.
I want to hear about it. Oh boy.
Well,
Can I go first? Okay, yeah,
No.
I want to share an experience. So I was filming one of the neighborhoods, Johnny Dome, 6 months ago.
Oh yes.
And there was an area that was about to go up for redevelopment,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't fenced up yet.
Yep.
And I was working on one of the main streets. I talked to one of the locals,
You talked with somebody living there.
someone who was still living there.
Yep.
I think the last remaining people in
Mhm.
the houses. And then suddenly, I think a hired security guy, he approached me and he demanded me to stop filming.
Mhm.
And it was kind of physical as well. So I want to know what are the rules and regulations regarding filming these non-fenced off abandoned areas? And what would you do in that situation? Because,
Ooh.
yeah.
I had a similar thing happen to me once. I just revisited the site on the weekend, actually. Nokbandong, they knocked down a neighborhood. And before it was gone, I drove my scooter through it. I was wearing a helmet cam. And when I got to the end, a security guard stopped me and managed to grab the keys out of my scooter and detain me until the police came. The police showed up and they said, you should ask for permission. And I said, did I break a law though? Like, what do you mean? And they were like, no, but you should have, just to be nice. And I asked them straight up, like, first of all, I don't like being confrontational with these people. I try to minimize any friction with any people around the areas that I go. I think that's very important, actually. But when I asked them, like, is there at all any risk that I broke a law, they could not point to one single thing, really. They just said, it would have been a courtesy if you talked to the local GU office. And I was like, well, I guess, but I mean, you don't even know what I'm going to do with this footage. You put it in a video that a lot of people saw. I didn't even put that one online. But yeah, I mean, the police just gladly let me go. I've been caught other times. They've asked to search my bag, and I learned very quickly they wanted to see if I was stealing objects or had spray paint. And I never do, so I've got no really real concerns. Those encounters can be very stressful, and they're best minimized. And that's something I work very hard to do. But when they happen, I don't know of anybody who's been arrested for or even fined for being in your situation. And I think that it's their right as humans with free speech to tell you to leave, but it's, and it's your right to decide whether you should or not, how much you should comply. But yeah, usually when I'm in that situation, I try to get out. Yeah. Yeah, I hope that answers. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a question.
So,
Whoa.
was another question that, okay.
Yeah.
Trying to find the sweet spot. Is there an elitist element in this hobby? Because you're trying to keep it to an absolute bare minimum, and I understand why.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
you don't want the place to be overrun, but then it does become a hobby that can only, or each individual site can only be enjoyed by a very, very small number of people.
Yes.
Unless everyone finds it go there.
Yep.
Is that a little bit elitist?
Yes, it
Do
is.
you have an ethical problem with that?
Do I have an ethical problem with the elitism? I think that it's better to be elitist than the alternative. Yeah, that's all I'll say. It's better to be safe than sorry. You can't re-hide a location after its details have been leaked. You can't undo property damage. So the elitism is an unfortunate part of the whole process. But I think it is necessary, yes.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Can you comment about the state of trespassing laws? Because urban exploration does involve trespassing, but you also said you're not aware of anyone being arrested for it. So
yeah. So trespassing is something that probably could be applied in certain times. The mental hospital in Gonjiam, I have heard that the guy there, he had lots of fences, and he said he would prosecute you. But I've also seen said many times, if let's say an abandoned neighborhood, even if it's fenced off, you walk through, as long as you don't damage something, even unintentionally, you're okay. If you damage something, even unintentionally, maybe you step on a piece of broken glass and it breaks in 2 more pieces, that could be considered a crime. That's about it, you know. To be honest, the fact that there have been so few legal incidents means we just don't have enough data to predict when it could be bad. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Thank you. Let's get down to the-
Woo.